that was it, the 2023 Formula One season. Dear Motorsport-Magazin friends and Formula One fans, the season ended in style, with a victory for Max Verstappen, of course. I'm almost sorry that we talk so little about the outstanding driver of the season, but the stories are written elsewhere. At the beginning, Verstappen had to defend himself a bit against Charles Leclerc. Tough resistance, but after lap 1, it was all over at the front. Behind him, however, it was really exciting throughout the race. Even if the race itself wasn't a cracker here in Abu Dhabi, but looking at the championship standings, it was exciting the whole time. Mercedes against Ferrari, the Silver Arrows came out on top in the end. 409 points for Mercedes, 406 points for the legendary brand. And that could actually have turned out differently. During the race, you always had to extrapolate and factor out a few pit stops to get the virtual championship standings. And on the very last lap, everything could perhaps have changed a little. Lewis Hamilton and Carlos Sainz hardly played a role. Hamilton only finished 9th, Carlos Sainz only 18th. We were speculating on a safety car that never came. They had to take the risk with him, but it didn't pay off. At the front, however, Charles Leclerc actually crossed the line in 3rd position. Behind him, Russell in 4th position. But then there was this penalty for Sergio Perez, 5 penalty seconds. And as a result, Leclerc and Russell moved up to 2nd and 3rd. The whole thing became really exciting because in this constellation, you could of course still pull off a trick or two. Leclerc was asking the whole time, what does it look like? And when he knew that Perez had this 5-second penalty, he said, okay, I'll let him pass now. Or even help him a bit, pull him with DRS, so that he could drive those 5 seconds away from Russell, so that Perez ends up behind Leclerc himself, but ahead of Russell. That would have been exactly the 3 points that Ferrari still needed in the championship battle against Mercedes. Then the points would have been tied. However, Ferrari took the only non-Red Bull victory this season, so that would have been 2nd place for Ferrari. But it didn't work out. Leclerc did pull Perez, gave him slipstream, but then Leclerc didn't block George Russell aggressively to slow him down. You can do that wonderfully on this track. Lewis Hamilton, for example, tried that in the 2016 World Championship battle against Nico Rosberg, holding up the entire field and pushing the competition into Rosberg. That's exactly what Charles Leclerc didn't do. Toto Wolff, the head of Mercedes Motorsport, says that this really is a true sportsman that shows his spirit in a situation like this. I asked Frederic Vasseur, the Ferrari team boss, whether it might not have been possible to be a bit more aggressive. Vasseur said that this is obviously also dangerous, because if Leclerc himself falls too far back, then of course he also loses position to Perez. However, Leclerc and Ferrari actually had nothing to lose. So they could have been more aggressive, they could have tried to really slow Russell down in the final sector. If it had gone well, Perez would have dropped back behind Leclerc, but not behind Russell. You can look at it however you want. Was it a great sporting move on Leclerc's part not to do that? Or was it perhaps just a bit too much of a mistake? Did he lack the, we like to say, arsehole gene that meant Ferrari didn't end up taking 2nd place in the Constructors Championship? Quite an interesting thing. That would have caused a lot of discussion, definitely. In the end, Toto Wolff didn't really care. He once again said that although there is a bit more money, there are better bonuses for the employees, they get less wind tunnel time. Fred Vasseur said that if the less wind tunnel time bothers him, then he should contest Sergio Perez's penalty, and of course he wasn't entirely serious. The penalty for Sergio Perez was of course an interesting thing. Perez against Norris. Perez was much later in the pits and had a huge pace surplus. It was clear that he would pass Norris. Then he tried it too aggressively, and then they clashed a bit on the first attempt. Perez thought that Norris would just drive into him. Norris said, "Wait a minute, what's Perez doing there?" He even said later that he wanted to let him past. He even kept 4 car lengths away from the apex, but Perez crashed into him anyway. The stewards saw it like Lando Norris, not like Sergio Perez, and imposed a 5-second penalty. Sergio Perez didn't agree with this and got a bit angry on the radio. He said to the stewards that the stewards are a joke and have been all season. But that was too much this time. They are not at Formula One level. The stewards looked at the whole thing again. Sergio Perez was summoned beforehand. There was a warning at the end. Perez allegedly apologized and so on. So I think we have to be careful that the language doesn't get out of hand in these situations. But what Sergio Perez said wasn't that bad. especially in the last race. You could have left it alone. It wasn't really needed in my personal opinion, but if the stewards feel offended, what can you say? Incidentally, there was a bit more stress with the stewards afterwards. All the team managers were summoned. You may have heard that in passing. Something is said to have happened at the pit stop. The race director reported that not all team members were wearing the correct eye protection during the pit stop. What does that mean in concrete terms? The visor was not closed on all of them. One or two of them were still wearing goggles as eye protection and so on, but they then appealed to the team managers to make it clear to the teams that safety is also a very important issue during the pit stop, and so they let it go. Charles Leclerc, we said he might lack that asshole gene. Sergio Perez at least had it on the radio. You are all lovely people. And because you are such lovely people, you also give your nearest and dearest something really nice for Christmas. How about a print subscription to your favorite Motorsport-Magazin, for example? As you probably already know, the subscription expires automatically after 1 year. You don't want to give your loved ones a gift for life either. No, you pay a fixed price, 49 euros in Germany, and then you give the gift of a year of real joy with our Motorsport-Magazin. The link is below in the video description. How do I make the transition from the asshole gene, I hope you'll forgive me for using this expression, to Lewis Hamilton versus Fernando Alonso? That was another really exciting duel. When Fernando Alonso drove out of the pit lane, he defended himself against Lewis Hamilton. And Lewis said, "Wait a minute, that wasn't defending, that was brake testing." He complained about it. The stewards looked at it, but said no, everything was okay, and it went on. Fernando Alonso provided the quote of the day for me afterwards. As you just know him, really nice jibes. He said that Lewis is clever, he understands the sport very well, has a lot of experience, but I have more. What was he doing there? He says he did exactly the same as he did 10 years ago in Canada. Those were DRS games. He wanted DRS and he said that he won back then in Canada and now he has won again. I have to say that Fernando Alonso didn't actually win the DRS game. Lewis Hamilton had DRS and went past. 1 lap later, Alonso countered, so that's why he didn't win the DRS game. He did win the duel at the end, but they're just two really great drivers. It was really fun to watch that, to hear the complaints on the radio, the old stories that were rehashed. It's really fun at that point too. By the way, in the editorial team, we do that with Mario Kart. We say it's the oldest DRS game there is. You like to drop back a bit to get a better item. Things are similar here in Formula 1, with Fernando Alonso also securing 4th place in the Drivers' World Championship, equal on points with Charles Leclerc. The better placings, or the more frequent better placings, have decided. 206 to 206 points, 205 points for Lando Norris. Carlos Sainz remained on 200 points. Incredibly exciting behind them too. But it was not only exciting in the Drivers' Championship, but also in the Constructors' Championship. McLaren took P4 against Aston Martin, and Williams took P7 against AlphaTauri. That was a really exciting race. Yuki Tsunoda finished 8th with a great race. Some people blamed AlphaTauri because they perhaps messed things up a bit strategically. More could have been possible. Tsunoda was on the road with a one-stop strategy. AlphaTauri said we took a risk. If a safety car had come out, it might have worked out really well. Even with a 2-stop strategy, we calculated that we wouldn't have got any further than 7th place. That wouldn't have been enough in the end. 28 points for Williams, 25 points for AlphaTauri. So very, very unfortunate, especially for Franz Tost, of course, who celebrated his last Formula 1 race for Scuderia AlphaTauri here. There was also a farewell ceremony later on. Many old companions were there, many drivers. Video messages from all the drivers, including Sebastian Vettel. It really was a very, very nice event, and you could see what Franz Tost means to Formula 1 and of course to the Red Bull Group and the former drivers. We also say Servus Franz, as people here on the grid kept saying, special caps made for him, so Formula 1 will definitely miss him. But that wasn't the only decision in the Constructors' Championship. It was also about the battle between Sauber and Haas, simply for pride's sake. Once again, the two did not cover themselves in glory. Both were far from the points. In that respect, nothing has changed. Sauber in 9th position, over the line in the Constructors' Championship. Haas in 10th position. Despite qualifying well, Nico Hülkenberg once again dropped back, and he once again reminded us that things can't go on like this. Haas definitely has a lot of work to do over the winter. But we don't have to wait that long for Formula 1. That was the season finale, but we still have the test. Of course, we'll be reporting on that too. If you're no longer interested in that, I'd be sorry, of course. But I would still like to thank you for your loyalty. It's unbelievable what we were able to experience together again this year. How faithfully you have watched. the numbers we had on this channel, even in a less exciting season. Many thanks to you all.